What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Today we have something kind of special planned, and I know a lot of people wanted the verses with the RCs. It is coming, just not today. Today we have an interview with FJ Desanto and Mike Avila from the creative team of War for Cybertron on Netflix. They have a book on the art of the War for Cybertron that is available now. All of the links for that are in the description. They actually contacted me. I'm not sure why, just because, I'm such a small fish in this pond, but if I was interested in doing an interview, and I said yes, I opened up some questions to the Patreon folks, and we recorded a session. This is the official version, and then there's an uncut version that's about twice as long on Patreon, if you are interested, including questions that I set them up and ended up being dead wrong and everything else, so you gotta pay to see me wrong some of the times. Anyway, a little bit of housekeeping. Like I said, that versus on the RCs is coming. Just give me some time. As far as the top 5 superhero things, look, I was just upset as you guys with some of Joe's answers. Some people said that we were like caping for DC and hating on Marvel, like Batman, Superman, Green Lantern. Like there was a bunch of DC heroes that were mentioned on that list. Also, some people were naming heroes that were worse, and like it's supposed to be mainstream superheroes, like not like super obscure ones. And it's also supposed to be just kind of for fun. Nothing to get too upset about. And as far as the PulseCon stuff, I feel like there was something I was supposed to comment on, but it has lost me now. So let's just go ahead and get into this. I'm very appreciative of these guys considering me for this. We only had a half hour, so I tried to be kind of as aggressive as I could in asking as many questions as I could. I hope they don't think I was being rude. I want to welcome 2 gentlemen on here with me today to talk about a number of things, hopefully the show, a book, a number of projects. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves so that they can say where you may know them from.
Hi, I'm FJ. I'm the showrunner, executive producer of the whole War for Cybertron Trilogy, and I'm also the showrunner, executive producer of Tekken Bloodline.
And I'm also here with Mike Avila.
Yep, I'm the writer of The Art and Making of Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy. Written a few other behind-the-scenes books and done some TV work in the past.
I know we are limited on time, so I want to make the most of it. My question for you both, what is the what's the target audience for this show?
Well, when we created it, it was brought to me that it wanted to attract that adult collector market. Mm-hmm. The people that buy all the toys, et cetera, the diehard fans, and they wanted it to be a love letter to that audience. Right. So, and because it was a G1 specific prequel, we sort of knew the sandbox we were going to play in. We knew the toys they were going to be using, et cetera. It's not me who comes in and pitches like, I want to do that era. It's them saying, hey, these are what the next toys are going to be. And it's me and my team's job to figure out what that story is. Right. The big surprise after the show came out was a big surprise to Netflix was how many kids watched it, which I'm really excited about. And it became a generational thing where it was like parents that are like, now adults who grew up with G1 have kids and they're sharing that experience. Mm-hmm. So we created something inadvertently multi-generational, right, which I'm really proud of. And also, there are different avenues of Transformers. So, for example, Cyberverse was geared younger, or the movie's geared towards that audience. Right. So we were finding our own little pocket to exist in and succeeded. Touching on Hasbro,
did you feel any limitations in working with them specifically in the character design? Obviously the toy models and such, the 5mm ports being, I know you've heard these things. Yeah. And I'm sure that there's also an advantage to kind of having this blueprint sort of just given to you to hit the ground running. But did you find it limiting at all in the same breath? Like with some of the mechanics of how they moved has to kind of work with the design that's already there?
Not at all. No, okay. No, they were very trusting. And I think it had to do with that. I had a good relationship with them that preceded the show. So they knew what I was capable of and what I wanted to do. And it was my desire to be loyal to the toys, mm-hmm, for better or for worse, because I was thinking of the little kids who would watch this show and fall in love with the character and go buy the toy. And how many times have you done that? And the toy doesn't look like what it looks like in the show, et cetera. Like that was really important to me, in terms of, if you loved something in the show and you wanted to go buy it, you were getting that experience.
I think that was obvious. Like that was even, no worries. But it was one of the things that we commented on, like love or hate these designs. If a kid is into it for the first time ever, that toy is going to look like the cartoon for real.
Yeah. And I was, to be honest, I thought I was being very sort of noble and heroic, sort of like, we're making it toy accurate. And then of course you can't please everybody. Then they're like, yeah, but we can see the holes in the toys and blah, 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 blah. It's like, the average person isn't going to think of that, if that makes sense. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Like, at a certain point, that's where you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. Like if I sat there and wasted time and money sort of like, let's make it look less like a toy, then we sort of defeated the purpose.
I got you.
Luckily, they weren't, they weren't forcing us to do a commercial for the toys. They wanted us to do a good show that featured the toys. And that's a very, very big difference. That allowed the writers to have a lot of fun, that allowed the director to have a lot of fun, and create something unique.
Well, I like to hear that space for creativity. I was going to ask you, Mike, as well, if you found, if in the sense of putting together an art book, if you found at all like maybe your color palette was limited with, the designs being, the toys.
No, not at all. I felt, honestly, the biggest challenge I had when I started looking through the photos is there was a lot. And by now I know roughly how big these books are going to be, right? They're going to be a couple hundred pages, and there's got to be some copy in there, even though, let's be honest, if you do just photos, this book would sell just fine. Right. We had so many great images. We included some of the marketing shots because some of the marketing images that were used during the life of the show and some of the toy box art was insanely cool. We all knew that the fans would want to see this. Like with some of the books that I've done, and I won't mention specific company names because I want to continue working with them. Mm-hmm. There's more resistance about using images not from the specific source material used for the book, be it a TV or a movie, right? Right. They don't want to do too much crossover, which I always think is a mistake, because if you're doing something that's based on a pre-existing IP, the odds are that the people buying the book are interested in the IP across the board, not just the specific property that we're talking about in the book. Here, there was no such resistance. When we said, hey, we'd like to show some images of the toys, here you go. Right. Pick what you want. Concept art, here you go. Just hundreds of concept images that we can use. And I love that stuff because I'm an art nerd, as FJ knows quite well. Looking through that stuff, we had so many great images. And plus, we could have our cake and eat it too, because we could show the images also of the toys that were based, that the show was based on. And I thought that was a win-win for the fans who hopefully will go out and get the book.
Gotcha. I had a question from my audience, and this is probably more so for FJ. Why the decision to go with non-union voice actors?
It was just a choice. Okay. It was, there was nothing sinister about it. It was just a choice of that way we can justify the amount of characters we have.
Well, it's hard.
That's really it.
It's hard, right? When you're especially you're trying to tie it into something that's established, and some of those voices are so iconic. It's rough, right? It's like Vader, right? Like James Earl Jones just sold his voice rights over, right? Because you can't, anytime anybody else does them, it never feels right. I wonder if you would have felt more freedom in that department with a clean slate as opposed to tying it back into something previously existing.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's just, for us, it was a fresh slate. Okay. I mean, it was that simple. And you've got something that's called War for Cybertron. There's a difference between making it 5 characters versus 15. Right. If that makes sense. Yeah. Because then it's not a war, if that makes sense.
No, for sure.
It was about scale. It was about, not necessarily about budget. I mean, we could have spent money on big actors, but we just could have had less characters, if that makes sense.
No, so that makes perfect sense. I think that's the answer he was looking for, honestly.
Good.
Are there any characters that you guys felt pressure or requested to use due to how the toys were being marketed?
Not necessarily. It was more, we knew long in advance what characters they were using. We actually let them pick. Mm-hmm. We sort of, because they had so many characters. So, okay, we have the budget for X amount of characters. You guys tell us, this is before we wrote even anything in the story, who are the important ones over the course of the 3 things? Who can we kill off? Who stays on Cybertron? Who keeps going on the ship? All that stuff. We worked all that out in advance with them. And obviously, as we developed it, it changed a little bit here and there. Yeah. But they were always supportive of it. But we weren't under any pressure.
Yeah. I mean, that's so amazing to hear, because I've talked to so many people, not obviously in the kind of the multimedia side of things, but in the toy production side of things. And it almost sounds like the parents are different when they go out in public or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like the way that they describe some of these companies behind closed doors versus, using, I guess, in a third party, more so cooperative, contracted almost nature seems like completely different, but it's refreshing to hear. I'm glad that you've had these positive experiences.
Yeah, I can't look. I very rarely had any issues with Hasbro during the entire process. They were great. No complaints at all.
That's awesome. Did they get involved in the storytelling at all, or they let you have free reign there as well for the most part?
Well, no, they gave us this sort of sketch of what each piece of the trilogy would be. So it was like, the first one is Band of Brothers, World War II. The second one is Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek. Third one is Beast Wars, Revisited. And they had certain story beats that they gave us that inspired us that we weren't obligated to use. But in some cases we did, and in some cases we didn't. Well, we did in advance, and this is in the book, is I went with another writer and went and developed the entire thing in one document, like a 15, 20-page document. So here's the 3 chapters, here's what's going to happen, here are the main characters, etc. And I made sure Hasbro, Netflix, everybody involved signed off on it in advance. So there weren't going to be any surprises as we were developing it. Things evolved, like, for example, Alita 1 got much more attention in the second season. That wasn't planned originally. But again, we're showcasing these figures and these toys in a big way, and these characters in a way that I think nobody had, sort of seen before. And I think it worked, and they trusted us with that.
It definitely seemed like they wanted it tied to G1. That was a big deal for them. Do you wish that was not the case, or did you want that as well?
I wanted that as well, but the thing is, and this was actually one of the few things we bumped heads on with Hasbro, which was, they wanted the show, I can say this now, they wanted it to end right at the start of G1, like Optimus gets on a ship and goes to Earth.
Right.
But it didn't make sense, as we developed it, because by introducing the Beast Wars characters into that third season, you've negated G1. So in my mind, it was more like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, which said, hey, if you watch Star Trek for 40 years, that all happened, but this event changes the timeline.
Gotcha.
So it sets everything on a different path. And again, I'm personally inclined to want to do G1 because that's my starting point for Transformers. That's my Transformers, So that's where my heart is in that Transformers universe. So to stay in that sandbox, but then throw this curveball was a lot of fun.
Now that it's over and the smoke has settled, do you view it as a success? Are you happy with it? Do you have any regrets?
Yeah, the only regret I have is that I wish we had more episodes. That's literally it, because I think, we stuffed a lot into this show and we got away with it. So, I'm super proud of it. And I find it super satisfying that people really like it, and it did really well on Netflix. Again, my only regret is more time and more money. That's
Copy that.
Literally it. But we did a good job working with what we had.
Understood. Mike, tell me why I should buy this book.
Well, if you want to know more, a lot more of the how and why this show was made, I think the book does a really good job of explaining that. I was able to talk to just about everybody that had a key role in the creation of this show. And there's a lot of detail on how the sausage was made, but also there's a lot of love for the Transformers franchise and the mythology from the folks involved with this.
Were you talking to people both on the Netflix side and the Hasbro side as well?
I talked to a Netflix executive. I talked to the Hasbro folks, including the guy who kit bashed the toy diorama that got the Hasbro CEO to say that needs to be a TV series. The whole genesis of the idea literally came from the toys, as almost everything with Transformers does, but not in the way you would think, like, a marketing meeting. It was some dude in there, taking these action figures and creating a cool scene, showing it to a room full of executives, and them saying that needs to be something bigger. And those are the kind of cool things you're going to find in the book. And I think people will really be entertained by those details.
What kind of art is in this book? Like, is it, because it is interesting, right? Because it is largely interpreted from the toys. So where's the nuance?
Oh, I mean, I think you're going to find, if you look at the character pages, a lot of the character pages, you're going to see concept images of scenes involving Skylinks, from thumbnail images to computerized color concept images to final production art. We show the genesis of how some characters evolve from the early stages of production to the finished stages. You could have just shown still images from the show, and a lot of people would have been happy because they look great. If you want to give people who are interested in learning more about the behind the scenes, you got to show more, and that's where all the concept art and the schematics and designs. I mean, we have a timeline in there that shows where this takes place. We have images of some of the ships, like the Ark and the Nemesis, that shows their scale. They did it really specifically, and so we show just how big some of these ships are in comparison. Little things like that, which I think make the book stand apart from some other
of books. I think the fans will really appreciate.
Is there any interest or chance of either of you returning to the franchise in the future, or are you kind of like good with your contributions?
I'm good with my contributions. I mean, look, I'd always come back if they asked. It's just we carved out our little era of Transformers, and I'm super proud of it.
Gotcha.
I would love to do another book on the Transformers franchise. Awesome. Something even with a wider scope.
I want to thank you guys for coming on. I know it was kind of aggressive, but I just wanted to kind of fit as many questions as I could in this very short period of time that we had. So thank you for giving me that.
Great.
Hey man, I appreciate.
Look forward to it.
All right, thank you guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
So yeah, I want to go ahead and thank them one more time. I do appreciate it. I also want to remind you guys that the link to their books and all that kind of stuff is in the description below if you're so interested. And the uncut version of this is available on Patreon. Other than that, I'll be back next week. To what capacity, I'm not sure, because there's a bit of a drought right now, but we'll see. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.